brother got a phone call from his roommate at the time, and she literally said, "You need to come pick up your dad because I'm not going to sit here and watch him die." And we're like, whoa, so my brother called me, we raced over there, and we found our father, like he didn't even know who I was. It was just that dementia stare, that sort of blank stare. And he just kind of looked at me, and the ER doctor finally came out. She pulled my brother and I aside, and she said, "Do you know how sick your father is? He has 2 weeks to live."
Wow.
And what we didn't know is that our father's doctor had told him a year prior that he had a year to live. And our father died 2 weeks to the day later.
Wow.
And that 2 weeks gave me like my education through hospice, working with the doctors, through family dynamics.
Hello, welcome. My name is Carline Cadet Francois. I am your host. I am an ALF consultant. We help busy professionals open and operate successful assisted living facilities and group homes throughout the state of Florida. We also build thriving circle communities. We meet once per month inside of the Thriving Circle community. I hope to see you in there. We are also the hosts of the annual Assisted Living Caregivers Conference, and tickets for the next event have already been selling out. We sold out last event. You don't want to miss it. Today, I am here with an amazing guest. And before we dive in, I'd love for you to help us reach our first 5,000 subscribers. We need a lot of help from you. So if you would please like, subscribe, and share it with a friend that will find it valuable. I am so excited to welcome Valerie Borgman to the show. Valerie is the founder of Clear Path Senior Solutions, host of the Desperately Seeking Senior Living podcast. I have been on her show, and she provides so much great content. She is a sweetheart. She do her best to help you. Check out her podcast. We will leave the link in the description. Put some comments. Let her know where you met her from. Without further delay, I am going to let Valerie introduce herself because I don't want to mess it up. Okay, Valerie, welcome to the show.
Carline, thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you. I absolutely love it. I love everything that you are doing for providers. This is a growing need. Right? There's so much need out there. And so I love it. And I'm so excited to be on your show. I started Clear Path. This is actually our 10-year anniversary, which is so super exciting. Yep. Started the company in 2015. Before that, I worked in senior living communities. So I was there in the trenches firsthand, and I was that tour guide, right, that showed families around the communities. And then during COVID, I started the podcast. So as you mentioned, you've been on the show. It was so great to have you, but we've got so much content and really covers everything to do with senior living and care. We have families that are on the show sharing their personal experiences, walking this journey, which can be so stressful for families. And so it's a passion of mine to help families and help educate, because it's a tough industry.
It really is a tough industry. And then even though we are all caregivers in different phases, because moms are also caregivers, right? I find that the lack of information sharing, and then when you find certain people trying to share information, they don't share the right information because they don't have the right resources in the education. And so that's why I think your platform and how you educate family members to deal with caring for a loved one is so rewarding, and we're grateful that you provide that service. Tell us, because I know you started as a personal mission, right, with your dad. Tell us a little bit about a background on how did you make this a personal mission for yourself?
My dad suffered from, I don't even think back in 2007 that it even had its name yet. And that was alcohol-induced dementia. And at the time I was 30 something, I was a single mom. I had one brother that was 18. Another brother was a single guy in his bachelor pad apartment. And we were faced with our dad really declining. And, you know, you mentioned that a lot of families, you know, may not share information. I think that's because it's so stressful. It's so overwhelming. I mean, our heads were spinning. We had no idea. This was way before I worked in senior living, right? I didn't have any information. I had no idea what was going on. And all we knew is that our dad was sick. And so we ended up getting a phone call. My brother got a phone call from his roommate at the time. And she literally said, "You need to come pick up your dad because I'm not going to sit here and watch him die." And we're like, whoa, you know, so my brother called me. We raced over there and we found our father. Like, he didn't even know who I was. It was just that dementia stare, that sort of blank stare. And he just kind of looked at me, and then there's this moment where you're like, okay, well, we are taking him to the ER. Like, what, you know, as a family member, you're like, I don't know what's happening here, but she thinks he's going to die. His roommate thinks he's going to die. We need to get him to the ER. So we're coaxing him. He didn't understand what was happening. So we're coaxing him into the car. We get him into the ER, and then that starts its own level of difficulties, right? I'm working with a family right now, and she had to take her dad to the ER, and it's like you're sitting there for hours. You don't know what's happening. He started to get combative, so they had to restrain him, which is a whole nother level as a family member watching that happen. And then the ER doctor finally came out. She pulled my brother and I aside, and she said, "Do you know how sick your father is?" We didn't. We had no idea. I mean, you know on some level, but when you're, you know, we weren't living with him, you know on some level that he's sick, but you don't really truly understand. And she looked at us and she said, "He has 2 weeks to live."
Wow.
And what we didn't know is that our father's doctor had told him a year prior that he had a year to live. But he didn't,
my God.
and he didn't share that with us. He didn't tell us because he didn't want that last year to be clouded. He didn't want that. And so we were completely shocked. And then what happened next was even more shocking because the ER doctor said, "I have no reason to keep him." So listen, Carline, don't even get me started on our healthcare system. That's a whole nother podcast episode, right? So literally she's like, "Here's your dad. Like, here you go. Take him home." Single mom. My brother in a bachelor pad. Our other brother is only 18. I'm like, no, I have no capacity to care for him. I cannot do this. My brother, you know, and so we literally, listen, I tell families all the time, begging is totally appropriate. Like, beg. We literally begged. And that ER doctor, you know, I always like to say that on our journey, there are angels. You know, no matter what you believe in,
Yeah.
there are these people that come into our lives that just are there at the exact right time. And that ER doctor was the first angel in our journey because she admitted our father to the hospital when she had absolutely no reason to.
Oh.
And our father died 2 weeks to the day later.
Wow.
That 2 weeks gave me like my education through hospice, through working with doctors, but not only that, through family dynamics, which they don't go away when these things happen. They get heightened when these things happen. I've had a few episodes about hospice on my podcast, and I still learn, right? So much, right? Through all these years of my work. And what I learned through that experience and just having that guest on the show is hospice nurse Penny. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She was on my show. And through that episode, I realized that some of the family dynamics that we had that were not great, I'm not proud of them. They were tough. But I realized that some of those bad things that happened were actually that person and how they were dealing with their grief. And even though they did some inappropriate things, that's how they were dealing with their grief. And I thought, wow, I don't know if they got help at that time, you know, to go through what they were going through. And that whole experience, I think more than anything, Carline, that experience made me realize that I want to help families, but it also made me realize that there's a way to help families. And that is like bringing in that compassion piece, that love piece. Like, this is real. I lost my dad. Like, we lost our dad. This was a real thing. And yet we had to navigate healthcare and hospitals and hospice and, family dynamics, right? We had to navigate all these pieces. The funeral home. Oh my gosh, that was a whole thing. I wish someone would have prepared me for that too, because I had no idea what to expect. And so this is my mission, right? To bring some of that passion, education, but also compassion. And then how I work because I work one-on-one with families too. And so bringing that, to that experience as well. And I know you do as well, with what you do.
That's amazing, because we don't realize how we grieve differently to touch that point. And the way that I grieve versus how you grieve is a completely new ball game. But then we don't realize this is what we're doing as siblings. So it's like what you're doing is annoying, what I'm doing is annoying, but Dad is dying. And we did not know Dad was dying. Oh my God, he didn't even tell us he had a year to live. And so now you're dealing with all type of emotional up and down blaming and Lord knows what else, but Dad is still dying. So family dynamic, especially with our parents, they try to protect us by telling us as little as possible. But in reality, it's not helping, because I would rather prepare for it than to wake up one day and it's like everything is going downhill. What am I going to do? Right? I come across sandwich generation children, and they all share that piece. They all share that piece because they're like, I don't know what to do. There's so much to do, and now I'm overwhelmed. And then one sibling will be doing when it's just trying to make this whole situation disappear and do nothing. Right. So I love the way that you are using your personal experience and that quick course that you went through, real life situation, and how you're putting it to help family members. So if someone is watching here and they're like, what is it that she really do? Can we go into what is it that you really do?
So I actually help families, and I help families all over the US. I help families that are facing the crisis of care and housing. So they are realizing that mom or dad is no longer safe at home. And now what's their next step? Is it in-home care? Is it tech? There's a lot of great tech out there these days. Is it, it's time to move? Is it mom is the caregiver for dad, but mom is really failing now? Because that's super stressful to be an 80-year-old caregiver, right? And so, helping seniors, I should say. Yes. So helping families with their aging parent. And so sometimes it's a move, sometimes it's a plan for the future. I always say that nobody likes to talk about senior living and care. We're all aging, but we don't want to think about it. And so things kind of are going smoothly and everybody's happy. And then bam, there's an event like what would happen with my dad. There's something that happens. And that, I would say, is like 99% of the time who we're working with. We're working when there has been an event. Something has happened and now we've got to figure it out. But we love it. We love it when folks come to us early because we like to put that plan in place. We do that. We do consulting. So where maybe they're not ready for a move, but they want to do that early planning. So we have our consulting services as well. And then I also, in addition to the podcast for education, I have an online university as well. And through the online university, which I'm so excited about, because there is not one state in the US that regulates people that do what I do. Whether you are seeing a national commercial for a company that says they can help you out, or whether it's someone local that's saying, hey, I can help you out, not one state requires us to have a certification. So like a realtor has a certification, a financial planner has a certification, right? But there is no required certification, and we are handling federally protected financial and healthcare information. But there's no required. Now, I went out and got 2 certifications because I was like, okay, this is not right. And I advocate for this, that we should be certified. Now, there are some states, a handful of states, including Washington State, that has certain regulations that says, like, we have to get a release of information, we have to do certain paperwork. But apart from that, you don't know what information you're getting. Are you getting good information? Is someone just trying to take your money? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff that we hear, and that's tough, right? That's tough when I'm hearing these stories from families. And so my online university is aimed at also training people that want to do what I do. They want to help seniors. They want to help families in their state. And so I have a university, it's affordable, that they can walk through and learn how to do it the right way. And so I'm really proud of that. And I have to tell you, Carline, I don't know when this episode is airing, but I am currently working on a handbook for families.
Wow, that's amazing.
To learn about the senior living industry. Because a lot of times, even on my podcast, a lot of what I'm doing is literally like vocabulary, because the senior living industry, we have our own language. You mentioned earlier about families, not sharing, and I think you said it, families don't know what to share. They have no idea what they're supposed to share. They don't know what they're being hit with words that they don't even know what that means. I've met families that didn't know what in-home care was, because how would you know until you need it, until you're faced with it? And so it sounds like a lot, huh? And I also speak. I'm so excited. I've been a speaker at your conference, which was absolutely incredible. I'm so excited for the conference coming up in January. Yes, if you haven't got your tickets, get your tickets now. So I also, as a part of my educating families, I speak as well. So really, it's about helping families through a process that is you as the family member, when you're going through this, not only is your aging loved one vulnerable, but you as the family member are vulnerable. You talked about the sandwich generation, right? Most of the families I work with have jobs. Many of them have kids still at home. And that's what that sandwich generation is. You're caring for your children and your aging loved one. And you're vulnerable in that moment, of who's helping you. You're at the mercy of which adult family home you're going to choose. You're at the mercy of, is it an adult family home or a senior living community? Like, what's the best fit? You're at the mercy of all this information coming at you. And how do you know? How do you know what the right next step is?
So true. You're also at the mercy of how educated that person who's helping you is, because if they end up with the wrong type of mentor, giving them the wrong type of information, couple that with stress, couple that with another one that I hear from the community a lot is the lack of money. Mom only have X amount of money, and I can only afford to add X amount to it. Usually there's only one sibling. Meanwhile, Mom used to be a very loving grandmother, but now she's hating my children. Now the kids are asking, what's happening to her? Why is she so now? I mean, your world is upside down at this point, right? And you're at the mercy of, who can I call? I get those calls all the time. And I'm just like, I've got to do something, because you can just feel the pain. You could feel the tension. You could feel the heartache and the anxiety when you hear a mom saying, my mom, and this is our only child, my mom is an amazing grandmother, but now she's hating my 5-year-old. And the kids are asking, what's wrong with her? Why is she so mean now? And could you imagine the heartbreak behind all of that? Yet you're struggling with finding the right community, whether it's an adult family care home, an assisted living, whether it's finding in-home options through a home health agency, for example. Like you said earlier, they don't even know the language. What is that? What does that involve?
Yeah, exactly. And can we talk about everything that you just said, and then also all those people that are outside of that bubble judging your every move? Like, why aren't you doing it this way? Why aren't you doing it that way? Right? So you have that on top of everything else. I don't know if you saw the interview, but Emma Hemming Willis, Bruce Willis's wife, she's written a book. She just did an amazing, heartbreaking interview, Diane Sawyer. And one of the things that really stood out to me from her interview, and I'm sure it's just because of the work that I do, she shared with the world what they have done in their family, which is to move Bruce Willis into a separate home. And part of that was exactly what you're talking about. It was to ensure that their young children had an environment that was more stable. Not that it was unstable, right? But dementia, as you're mentioning, is very unpredictable. And it can be very difficult for children to be facing that. And this is their dad, that you're watching this decline. They also did that so other family members outside could come and visit. And then they hired in-home care. And the first thought that I had, because there are, like you mentioned, there are families that do not have the financial resources, so many families. And then there are families that do. And I thought how powerful and how brave to talk about that they have established this living arrangement to ensure that Bruce is cared for, but that the family is also receiving that support and care. And I just thought, she is doing so much for family caregivers right now. And really not just with FTD, frontal temporal dementia, but also for all family caregivers. Because no matter what the care needs are, it is stressful and overwhelming. And so I just thought that was so brave of her to share what they're doing. And it's not always possible to be the caregiver. It's just not always physically possible to do it. And that's okay. That's okay.
I agree. And it's a perfect example to be able to care for the person going through. Could you imagine waking up and not knowing who you are? Not even recognizing your own children. You're in your body, but you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't know who that is. Could you imagine that level of trauma and anxiety for our precious seniors? But then the family members also suffer just as much. Yeah. Walking up to mom and mom don't recognize you. Oh, how could you forget about me? But you also know that it's because of that mom's dementia. So being able to share that story is very empowering to the caregiving community and letting people know it's okay because you can treat your loved one and you can also treat yourself nice. And at the end of the day, we all win. And although there are people who cannot afford, there are a lot of people who can afford different type of senior options. And thank you for sharing that because I didn't know about that. But now we're all exposed to it. And it's empowering to hear and different strategies what people are doing to be able to meet the needs of their loved one. And I want to ask you, what made you decide to structure your whole life, your whole career to helping caregivers?
It really was what I went through with my dad. And not just my dad, because I did move on to work for Barnes & Noble. And I was a manager for Barnes & Noble for a while. And I just loved the seniors that came into the cafe and they would sit there all day and you'd get to chat with them and get to know them. As a person, we all have our gifts. We're all built for different things. And for me personally, I really feel a strong connection to those who are vulnerable and just helping. And for me, I think with what happened with my dad, that just really, put me in the position of vulnerable adults and seniors. And, when I hire new staff members, I hire for heart. That's the I cannot train that. I can train everything else, but you have to have heart. And that is the number one thing I look for in a new hire. And for me, it's just about how can I give back? And then once I got in the senior living industry, because I've been in the industry for years, once I got in the industry and I started seeing all the things that were not okay, and I'm like, did you just see that? Am I the only one that saw that? Did anybody else just see what just happened? And you start to see these things and then you start to realize how much families don't know. They're not aware of their surroundings, because I know with my experience with my dad that you're very inward in that moment. When it's a tough moment, you're very focused and your focus is not on is that a good adult family home? That's not your focus, right? Because you're very, and so when we work with, just being able to help families as much as possible, right? Listen, I even want to get on Capitol Hill. Can we get on Capitol Hill? Can we talk about some of the things that are happening? And I don't want to, listen, I hope your listeners are inspired in some ways, but also inspired to, reach out to their local governments to say, hey, why is there a national company that is allowed to take my personal information? All I wanted was some help. And now I'm getting 20 phone calls because they have spread my information around. Why is there a national company or two, we won't name names, that I think I'm calling the local senior living community that's down the street because I drive by there every day. But really, I'm calling this online aggregate that is sharing my information, and now my phone's blowing up. These are the things that, and they have been taken to the Supreme Court in more than one state, but it's going to take all of us collectively coming together. And so when I see people like Emma using her platform for this, I am just so apt. And Seth Rogen and his wife also, they have a film. I believe that their parents are now they have family members that are now facing this, right? Same as Emma. I want it to be better for when you and I are there. I want it to be better now, but I also want it to be better when it's me and you.
Absolutely.
There's just so much out there and it's just so hard. And I want to just quick point about the phone calls, like your phone blowing up. It's like reaching out to get a plumber, right? And you get all these phone calls, but you have to answer the phone if your loved one's in the hospital. You have to answer the phone because you don't know if it's the doctor, if it's the nurse, right? The PT, physical therapist is calling. You have to answer your phone. And it could be a senior living community from 10 miles away that you're not remotely interested in, that's gotten your phone number. We've touched on so many different topics, right? Dementia, caregiving, family dynamics, not knowing the language. There's so much. It's so hard. And I love the work that you do in helping to train the providers and helping the providers be good at what they do for families.
It's a lot. And you know what? You mentioned earlier heart. When I used to manage my own assisted living, you would find most of my staff were very nice people. I didn't care for the experience. I care that you legitimately love my seniors. You would care for them, even if it was something that you didn't get paid for, you'd still do it and be joyful about it. Once I saw that, then I hired. Then I worry about, okay, let me get trained, let me get you up to par, let me get you. But a heart is something you are born with. It is where your human likeness come from. And so I want to give you credit for hiring that way because you really can't go wrong hiring the heart. And I recently started going out and networking with different people from Congress. I share a lot of deep passion for our seniors. And even though there are so many things that are right, there's so much more that needs to be done. I find especially there's a small population of seniors that cannot afford things. And I want to know what's going to happen to them, because I believe our seniors paved the way for us to have so many opportunities that we all take for granted. Like we're second generation. You know how when you're first generation, I'm first generation, you work so hard, and everything becomes so easy for the second generation because they don't have to work hard. I feel like our seniors were the first generation, and now we are all the second generation. And now they need us. Whether they can afford things or not, we need to take care of them. And so Congress help us to pass different sets of rules and regulations to help those seniors, especially the ones who cannot afford things, right? So I share that. We all need to go to Congress for different things. Maybe we'll end up there together one day. Yeah, seriously. You don't know me, girl. When I said we're going to end up there.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
I love it too. I love it too. I think it's amazing to have the heart. But you mentioned something earlier that is very profound as well, because you talked about how I feel like families are being misled at a time where they are so stressed out. They are focused on finding a solution And I feel like sometimes they can be taken advantage of because they are very vulnerable at that moment. And to think that you are reaching out to a specific facility only to find out that they don't even deal with seniors. They're just sharing your information to whomever they're sharing it to. And those communities who are actually putting the heart and soul into their business, it makes it even more difficult for them because some of these communities believe they need to pay those entities money to share leads with them. And then the leads come, the lead is not even a lead that is within your distance, is someone you can actually care for, that meets your licensing guidelines. And now you're overwhelming the family member because you believe you can help this family member because you got this lead. But in reality, this family member is receiving so many other phone calls, adding to the stress that they already have going on. And then at this point, I'm thinking they're probably thinking, oh, well, who's who? Who can actually help me?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I say this a lot on my show. If you're listening here and you're also a listener of my show, you have heard me say senior living and care is a business. It's a business. And when you're a family member and you're in a caregiving role, you're not thinking of, you're thinking senior living and care, that it's about care. And it is about care, but it is also a business. And that is the piece as a family member that it is very important to understand, because everything we've talked about honestly can sound a little overwhelming, right? There's a lot we have talked about today, but if you keep this in mind, that's a business. So like I was on a tour recently with a family because we accompany families if they want us to on the tours. And so we were on a tour and we were sitting there, and I have all the knowledge I have. And the tour guide was just saying, yes, yes. Oh, it'll be fine. Oh, it'll be fine. Oh, it'll be fine to everything. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, they're being a yes person to get the sale, to get the move in. Right. And so a lot of times when that happens, we'll leave, right? Your mom or dad can stay here forever, no matter what. That is not entirely true. And so families, they may hear that, like, let's say I'm not there to help them. They may hear that. And then 3 years, 3 months later, there's a symptom that, the hitting that you talked about. Well, if a resident is hitting other residents, it's possible that they may be asked to go into a different setting. They may not be okay with the setting you chose. So it's a business. There are a lot of different little things that may not be what you think they are. And so it can become very difficult to navigate, again, everything we're talking about. But here's the thing, and this is what I share with every family I talk to. Go with your gut. We're talking about heart. Heart is what really, right? We've talked about heart. We've said that word. Heart and love, that's what it really, really should be about. If your gut is telling you, this feels right, this feels good to me, that's what you listen to. Not the marketer that is so nice that you want to take them home. Oh, I want to go have lunch with you. I love that part, by the way. I've had families look at me after move-in day and they go, you mean we're not going to see you again? It's okay. Call me anytime, right? And, so it's right. If your gut is telling you it's not the right place, run. Please run. I had a guest on my show. She's like, Valerie, my gut was telling me it wasn't the right place. And I went back and toured 2 more times because I really liked the marketer. And I'm like, I get it. And she goes, I wish I would have just listened to my gut. So everything that we're talking about, that's really the bottom line. It's hard. It's so hard. But if you listen to your gut, then You really can't go wrong with that. And I help families when I'm helping families, we narrow down the options, right? So they're getting the options. And I want to talk really, quickly about cost, because that's part of what we do when we're narrowing those options down. We're presenting families with options that fit their budget. And I hope we get better. I truly hope as a nation that we get better at that. My fear is that we may not get better at that. And that's why you were on my show for my state by state series. Takes a long time to get through 50 states, but we're going to get there. But the main purpose of that state by state series is to help families who maybe one sibling is in one state, another sibling's in another state, and they're able to go, oh, wait, this state's better for us because we don't have as much money. We don't have the financial resources. So, okay, son, you're the winner, right? Your state wins, daughter. Mom's going over there, right? And so the financial pieces, it really is tough. There are some states, like I said, the West Coast is pretty good. Florida, you've got some programs too. There are other states that if you need care, you might be talking about a skilled nursing facility, a nursing home. That might be the only option. Yeah. So it's really tough. But if you do have options, go with your gut. I don't think you can go wrong.
Absolutely. I agree. You cannot go wrong with your gut. I train my community, people that are opening their ALFs, on how they should always do the right thing, what their building should be structured like, cleanliness, making sure that there are no fall hazard laying around just waiting for a senior person to fall, and how to treat family members. Because we end up, by the time you structure your ALF, your life, you welcome your first client and you realize, oh my God, I'm not only taking care of the client, I'm also taking care of their daughter, their power of attorney, because they come to you asking you for everything, and you end up educating them. And so one of my biggest mission is to help those operators, those people who own those ALF buildings or who manage those ALF buildings, who work in those ALF buildings, how to conduct themselves. And because sometimes you get complacent. You've been doing something for so long, but you've been doing it wrong for so long. And just because you've been doing it wrong for so long does not make it right. I've also have had the opportunities to work alongside larger communities because of what I was doing within the community. And I walk in and I see all the wrong signs. I see all the wrong signs, but then you see it's business as usual, and like you, I'm like, she's not supposed to look like this. This is not supposed to happen. Someone needs to do something. But then everybody smiling as if, nothing is going on, when in reality, I'm sitting there and I'm there to do a specific thing. I'm not really there to look at what's going on, but I can't help it. And you see it's business as usual. And you're wondering, how do family members walk into this situation and leave their parent there?
Yeah.
How?
Don't you think, Carline, it's because they're overwhelmed? They don't see the things that we see because it's our job. We see them because it's our job to see them. But I think families don't see them sometimes because they're just really overwhelmed. Caregiving is one of the hardest jobs. So don't you think that's what it is?
Absolutely. It is definitely the overwhelm, is definitely the laser focus on a solution. Definitely hoping, okay, maybe it's person specific. Maybe this situation is going on because maybe there's something deeper with that senior person. Hoping for the best. That's definitely what it is. Maybe it's the lack of education. Maybe the marketing person, they have a belief in the marketing person. Maybe they think this situation is just temporary. They're fixing that because no way this marketing person that I saw that did such an amazing job is going to allow this to continue. I'm pretty sure it's not because they don't love deep enough or they don't care deep enough, but they are suffering so much and they are hoping for the best. They are praying for the best. And sometimes they get the best. Oftentimes they don't. Have you come across situations like this?
Carline, you are talking my language. Listen, you know, this is why I just could not work in a community any longer, because everything you just said about that tour guide, I would see things that I was not okay with, but I was nobody's boss in that building. I was in charge of my department. I could do what I could do, right? But then my hands were tied. And there was nothing more frustrating than telling a family that A, B, and C was going to happen. And then they're coming back to me a month later going, you said this was going to happen and it's not happening. And I'm like, what? Because I couldn't do anything about it. Not really. I could complain, but I couldn't actually make change in that space, right? My job as a tour guide is a sales position, right? That's to help people move in. It happens all the time.
You know, another perspective that is also important. Could you imagine you seeing what you're seeing and have a limit because of what your job duties are and what your capabilities are under those umbrella? To know that you want to change that and not be able to change it, and to watch family members come in day and day and day, and then to know that they're all going to go through this pitfall, and then there's nothing you can do about it. That does not make you feel empowered. And this is one of the reasons why caregiver turnovers when it comes to employment is very high. Because could you imagine you go to work because you love seniors, you want to make a difference, and you get there and they say, keep your mouth shut if you want to keep your job. How do you go home with that? And it's just so many different perspectives to juggling caregiving and how do we make life better for our seniors. And I think leadership training, empathy goes a long way.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, my first senior living community that I worked in was an independent living community, and I got in trouble, and I was the tour guide. I got in trouble for talking to the residents too much. I was like, I'm in their home. Of course I'm going to talk to them. It just blew my mind. That was my first experience in senior living back in Illinois. I was just like, okay. So yeah, I mean, listen, there's a balance, and I understand, and I think it's important to understand there is a balance. Senior living communities, adult family homes, in-home care companies, they all have overhead, right? I have to put food on the table. There's a balance, right? You got to pay. And are you paying your caregivers competitively so that they do stay, so that they don't have to have 3 caregiving jobs? They can just have one, right? And so there are so many factors. And I think it's important to point out that, yes, of course, they got to pay the light bill. It is a business from that perspective. But like you mentioned, I believe you talked about caregivers and really wanting to help people. I believe that 99.9% of the folks that work in senior living and care came to this out of heart. We want to help our seniors. That's what we want to do. And sometimes it's just reconnecting to your why, because like we said, this is a hard job. It's hard. And so reconnecting to your why is super important. And Carline, I have one of just the most lovely woman. She is just a wonderful, lovely woman. And she was the caregiver to her husband, who she watched have dementia. They were older. She's been on my show. You can hear her podcast. And she watched her husband decline and decline. And it got to the point where she was like, Valerie, I cannot do this anymore. I cannot be his caregiver. Help me find a place. And the first place that she went with her gut. And that was an adult family home. You felt the love, and it just felt like it was going to be a great experience. I have to say that listening to your gut, it doesn't mean something isn't going to happen, but she listened to her gut the second time too. So listen to your gut. I think that's another super important point.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that, because even us, I remember I hired a particular staff and I thought she had the heart, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're great. And after the first 3 days, I'm like, I don't think the heart is there. I think she just knows how to answer my questions and what I'm looking for. And She fed me the tea that I was looking. And so it's okay. We're human. And sometimes we think we get it and we don't. But at the end of the day, as long as we do our best to make it right and to make a decision that brings us to what we intend to do to begin with, it's never too late to make that decision. And you also mentioned facilities that are not well. And last night, I ended up working late because I ended up taking on to a facility that had been open for Lord knows how many years, but it was not being managed correctly. And the agency came and they had issues that they had to fix. And so me being me, if I am in it, you're going to see that Carline is in this and Heart is in it. So even though I didn't have to, I ended up going to the facility and I spent at least 3 hours there fixing everything. I went with my laptop and I was just putting procedures in place, fixing this, fixing that. And because my focus is also, as I am fixing it, I'm also educating the staff. This is why I am doing this. These are the reasons behind it. This is why you should do it. Now I put checklists, procedures, I educate you, I tell you what to do. And I enroll you into my Thriving Circle so you can come meet me live and get continuous help. I not only solved the problem with the agency, now I am training you. I am providing checklists to you. I am letting you know this is what you did wrong and this is why you have to fix it and this is why you have to continue to fix it because these are the reasons behind it. Not just losing your license, but also the families that will be hurt. After the agency have to come down and shut you down. This little lady that depends on you. You know, our seniors don't like new faces. You know, they like to stick with the same people who love them. And those are the people that they want to stay with. Imagine the family members having to be stressed out about having to find a place for mom to go to. Oh my God, they got to go. Oh my God, they got to go through this whole thing all over again. So are a lot of our facility owners who are caregivers, but they lack the operational aspect of running a business.
Yes, yes, yes. It's the whole, you have to be able to do it all or hire you, or they've got to hire somebody, right, to help them do all of that. You know, because something's, if you're not lined up, if you don't have a system, then something's going to break down. Something's going to fall through the cracks. And I hate to hear that it's care. I hate that. That's the worst part, to hear that it's actually care that's falling. And listen, we've said the word vulnerable. We're talking about vulnerable adults, and most of the families that I work with, they don't want to complain because they fear, will that mean something, is there going to be backlash? You know, I mean, that's a real fear that families have. And the vulnerable adult doesn't want to complain because this is their caregiver that comes in every day, you know? And so you're walking this, you're doing this dance of trying to make it right. And luckily you were there. That's amazing.
Yes. And when you see a lot of, I mean, it's real. Family members, they don't want to say much because they rely on you to care for mom, because that's how they're able to step out and go care for their own children, keep their jobs and different things that goes on. And then could you imagine, you know, the senior person, you are all that they know. They don't have family there with them. And so they don't want to piss you off. And if they did, I'm pretty sure it's age-related issues like, have some grace. Do you mind? You know? And
it's gonna be you.
You know?
It's gonna be me. We're gonna all be there someday.
Yes, and I agree. And you also touch on, you know, making senior care so perfect that when we get there, it will be a lot easier for us. It's easier said than done. But if we can all imagine one day you will be that person, and if the universe reward you for exactly what you put in it, what do you have to look forward to? If we can all ask ourselves that.
Yeah. And this is, I think this is where it ties, everything that we're talking about ties back into heart. Because that's, you know, even when we're talking about dementia, when I worked in a memory care for 2 years, my office was in that building. And I just loved working with folks with cognitive impairment because they may not be able to have a conversation with me, but when I smile, they smile. When I, touch a shoulder, they lean in. Like they can feel the heart. They cognitively may not be able to, understand what's happening, but you can feel when someone cares or when they don't care. And that's what everything that we're talking about ties back into that. How to find that heart connection. And then if it's not there, okay, you need a break. We all need a break.
I agree. I feel like once they lost that memory that we rely on, you tap into who you truly are, which is feeling into everything. We all feel things, we just dismiss them. Then they rely on feeling to see if this person really care about them, feeling to see if this person really love. Can they trust this person? Can they find a way to stay away from this person or not piss them off? And they rely on feeling for all of that. And then so it's a lot deeper than just, oh, it's senior care or I'm a caregiver, whether I own my business or I work at a business. It's more so, let's make it better. Let's think about every action that we're taking and accountability too. How should family hold those senior living places accountable for not doing the right thing?
To answer your question, practically, when you move into any of the places, even in-home care, but when you move into a community or an adult family home, there is paperwork that you are signing. And I am sorry to share that paperwork is like buying half a house. Okay. It's a lot of paperwork. And I would say the number one most important thing is to make sure that you do not leave that office without a copy of that paperwork, because you have no idea how many families over the years have said to me, but they said they would take Medicaid in the future, but they said this was going to happen. And now they're saying we have to move out because my mom's out of money. But I thought they were going to accept Medicaid, right? And they can't find their paperwork because they never got a copy of it. And now they have no leg to stand on. But more importantly is sometimes there will be concessions given. You might get a special rent rate. They might say, we're going to waive the second person fee. They might say, you're moving into this apartment because the apartment you love is not ready. We're going to go ahead and move you when the time comes, when the apartment you really want is available. Any special concession that you get, you have to have them write it in to the paperwork. It's got to be written in, and then get that copy. Now that's just like the big picture, right? Those are the big picture things. When it comes to holding folks accountable day to day, you have to check your state for specific laws. But if we're talking about something really severe from a care perspective that really is not, things are not right, then you could install a camera. But there are states have their own very specific laws. For example, in Washington state, you can install a camera, but you have to have a specific reason and you have to have a beginning date and an ending date. Now that ending date can be expanded or extended, but you have to have that. And then everybody has to sign. That's severe. If you're not ready for that step, I have had family members that didn't like what was happening from a care perspective. And I recommended that they just ask if they can be present the next time the shower is given. Maybe there's a step that the caregiver's missing. Maybe the temperature of the room is not warm enough. And that's why mom is having some problems with the shower, right? We don't know. And so you could be present for some of the care. Every state has a phone number you can call if it's something you don't feel can be worked out, where you can file a complaint. I would say every state you can do that anonymously. I know in Washington you can, but I don't know that for sure for every state. Communication, that's huge. And I would say and this is just, if you have chosen for heart, my feeling is communication is probably going to be there. And if you communicate things are not quite going your way, then probably that person, if you have chosen for heart, is going to be open to, let's make changes. We don't know unless you tell us. We don't know if it's broken unless we know it's broken, right? Now, I want to tell you a funny story about this. And I have a really great funny story. One of my clients, one of the families that I worked with, her dad, she moved him into an assisted living, and she is his power of attorney. She's watching the bills every month, and she called up the community and she said, hey, listen, my dad doesn't get room trays. There's 2 room tray charges. And that means they delivered his meal to the apartment, to his apartment. She goes, we've got 2 room tray charges here, and I know that my dad would not have done that. He would have gone down to the dining room. And so the provider said, well, I will absolutely take that off your bill. No problem. And I know the provider and I know the family really well. And so the next time I saw the provider, and it was actually an event. We were all there. The family was there. I was there, the provider. And afterwards I was talking to the provider and I said, listen, the family wants you to know how much they love you, how much they love being here. And she said, she knows she's in your office a lot to talk to you, but she wants you to know. And that provider said, Valerie, I have the funniest story to tell you. She came in and called me about these room trays. And I said, you know what? No problem. We're going to take the charge off. She said an hour later, her dad called and ordered a room tray. So there's so many lessons in that, right? We don't always know everything our loved one is going to do. And then also communication. That's really important too.
Thank you for sharing that story, because when it comes to like temperature of food, temperature of the room, seniors don't like to take showers. Once they get to that age, they don't want to be bothered. So it's like they complain to the family members and the family members act a certain way. But family members, please do remember the way that you used to know your mom and dad, things have changed. So keep an open mind and have communication. My advice would be to hold communities accountable or to complain, right? You're having a conversation because thing you don't like. Don't make it seem like, oh, it's just a conversation. No, it's a complaint. And I want you to address it because it is a complaint. So I'm not just lightly telling you, I don't like this, I don't like that. I'm letting you know so you can do something about it, so you can present me the solution. And then if the solution is not something we can agree upon, there are ombudsman laws and different mediators. That the other thing is, besides doing that, is looking at views online, right? I know a lot of my audience listening to this, you are an operator. You are someone who have an assisted living or a group home. You are someone who is in the process of opening an assisted living in a group home. Congratulations. Now you know how to prepare yourself. You know the best case scenarios, the worst case scenarios, what family members think. You know from a consultant who help family members find communities, senior options for their loved one. You know her perspective. Now you know how to better position yourself. Now you know how to educate yourself, things to watch out for. And look at reviews. And if you've done every single step, you've followed the procedures, you try to work things out, and you're at the point where you have to move mom out because either the community didn't care enough or something terrible happened, write a review so that other family members don't have to go through that. Now, I tell family members also, pay attention to the review. Not all bad reviews are actual bad reviews. And so there are different ways that you can get things involved, and communication play a major role. Anything else you want to share with my audience?
You mentioned reviews. I have to share. I had a 5-star review. You said not all reviews are bad, and that's so funny because I would like to add to that, if you do get a bad review, to go ahead and comment, like reply to that review, have that conversation, so that, because people look at that too. But I had a 5-star rating for almost 10 years, Carline. I was 5-star rating all the way across the board until a wonderful gentleman who wanted to live closer to his son, and we had a fabulous conversation. Unfortunately, he had been looking at a lot of places already. And so with the places he looked and the places I knew I couldn't give him everything he wanted in the city he wanted to live. And so I said to him, I am so sorry. I can get you close, but I can't get you everything you want. And so he left me a 4.5-star review, and he broke my I called his son, and I laughed so much about it. And it was just so funny. So yes, sometimes those bad reviews are not exactly bad reviews.
That is so hilarious. That is so hilarious. It's just, yeah, you're right. This story really, really bring it home. Okay. And I know people get into this business to care for seniors because I know we said that before, because they really care to care for seniors. Sometimes there are different layers. It's like peeling off an onion. There are different layers that prevent a communication from being the type of communication that brings results. I always tell both the operators and the caregivers, the family members, to find a middle ground. We all grew up, cultural differences, what people do culturally could be an issue. And so trying to keep an open mind and finding a solution is best for everyone, because at the end of the day, you want them to care for your loved one correctly. They want to care for your loved one correctly, but in between that is life. And so you have to find a middle ground. You'll be at the Assisted Living Caregivers Conference 2026.
Carline, yes, thank you for that reminder. That is where you can find me next. Yes, I'm working on another project with Melissa Fritz. I am co-hosting a documentary based in Seattle that is called 30 and 30. 30 senior living communities in 30 days, just to give families a whirlwind of a view of what's out there. And that is going to every state, Carline. So maybe we can connect and make that happen for Florida as well.
Absolutely. Would love to help you out on that and bring that perspective to Florida. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I mean, you always over deliver at the conference. You did such an amazing job. The last conference we had, and now we just had you here. It's just super amazing. And we can see your heart doing what you do best. And I'm grateful that you spent that time educating my community. And I want you guys to reach out to her and say hello and let her know what was your biggest aha moment out of this entire recording, and what did you find that really helped you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. I want you guys to like, share, subscribe if you find any value in this. You know that we love to serve you. We go out of our way to find different perspectives, all in all, to help you thrive in senior care. Thank you for spending this time with us. Until next time, I will see you in the next one. This video is brought to you by the Florida Assisted Living and Caregivers Conference. It is an annual conference for all those who want to open an assisted living right here in Florida. We bring you all of the who's that will help you achieve your ALF. We have caregivers, we have people that already have their assisted living up and running, and they are here for resources. We have caregivers caring for mom and dad at home, but lack resources, so they show up for more resources. We have investors that are in the room looking for partnerships because they don't necessarily want to manage, but they are looking for someone to do the day-to-day while they can do the other investments. We also bring to you all of the sub-industries, those providers that help you get your ALF up and running, the providers that will come to your ALF to provide services to your seniors. We bring everyone in the room for the first time. This event normally sells out. Click the link in the description and I will see you in the room.